All right, gentlemen, today I want to make sure that you have read over holiday all of the articles. You're laughing at me?
Sorry, I thought holiday was like an author of a book or something that.
No. Over holiday. We give you a holiday so that we can pile work on you. That's what holidays are for. They're opportunities to add more work. I want you to make sure you have read the article on lexical analysis. I want to make sure you now will read the article on grammatical analysis by Johnston. I want to make sure that you should have read by now background studies. And finally, I want you to read Lowry's validation. 4 articles. Did you get that? Lexical analysis, grammatical analysis, background study, and then finally, validation. Remember, we've talked to you about validation. Validation is where you make sure that your controlling purpose statements are supported by the or buttressed by the supporting points underneath. You should have at least 2. And you ask in validation, does the controlling purpose statement of the paragraph get support from the supporting statements that I've discovered underneath A and B, and does A and B support the supporting purpose statement? So all 4 of those articles should be read and get into your mind for your final project. By now you should have determined what 10 to 12 verses you're going to do in Ephesians to develop your running commentary. What we want you to do in this is a running commentary. You're to make your own commentary as if you were explaining this passage to someone in technical detail, a fellow student. You're researching, you're observing, and you're writing this up in a continuous flow narrative of lexical and syntactical and grammatical problems, how you're solving it, you're identifying your problems, and you're talking this passage through. Here's my controlling purpose statement. How does your controlling purpose statement develop from the whole of Ephesians? How does that develop within the passage? And then how does the author after that develop after that section, the argument of Ephesians? You must never forget the argument of Ephesians and be discussing it, the whole as well as your section. So you're writing up your discoveries, lexically, syntactically, grammatically, the problems you're solving, continuous flow narrative. You're writing your own commentary on 10 to 12 verses. Questions? And you're looking for problems. And if you don't find a problem, what? You should find plenty of problems. As a matter of fact, the page of 25 pages is not nearly enough if you do this right to discover. And let me just tell you, imitation is a form of flattery. A lot of the work in discovery has been done by the commentary I assigned you. I do not like slavish attention paid to commentaries, but when you learn the exegetical method, you can learn how to do a lexical study. When is the lexical study due? Tuesday after holiday. And then you owe me that paper, that final exegetical paper. Continuous running flow commentary, marking it off verse by verse. In verse 12, the writer's ... and then you're identifying significant points, problems in there, and you're writing this up. All your discovery, your observations from commentaries, they should be footnoted or endnoted. And it should be in good technical detail. Remember, you're not preaching this. This is something you'd use from this to form a sermon. Homiletics is the final step. Exposition, the final step, where you would remove these technicalities. I want the technicalities in here. I want to see that you've learned grammar. that you know grammatical positions. Questions? Have you chosen your passage? Have you? How many chose something in Ephesians 1? Raise your hand. Ephesians 2. Ephesians 3. Nobody likes the Gentile inclusion, huh? Ephesians 4. Ephesians 5. Ephesians 6. Okay, make sure you're working now on that passage. Make sure you're identifying everything. Any other questions now before we get back into lecture? All right. We left off at page 65, the intensive study. Remember, in Grasmic, there's the preliminary step. And there you're reading the Greek text. You're reading English translations. And you are doing observations of the text. You're reading the Greek text until you're familiar with it. You're reading over and over again English translations. You're observing and writing down your observations. You're making notes. But all of this is preliminary. What we've discussed up to now has been preliminary. You're asking those questions. Who? What? Why? When? How? You're interrogating the text. You're looking for problems. Page 40, and then we'll get to another page where these are. This is all preliminary. This is your meditation phase. This is where you're kind of familiarizing yourself with the text. Then, after the preliminary stage, there's this second step, the intensive step. And that's much of what this is, but you're really looking closely. The intensive step on page 65, you're looking very closely. You're starting to mark down the problems, the arguments for the problems, and how you would resolve it. Look at page 65. You're looking for problems. Structural, grammatical, lexical, historical, theological, exegetical. Exegesis is not a spectator sport, so you're working on that. In addition, you're consulting commentaries. Now, we're going to skip pages 66 to 138 in our Grasmic Principles and Practice of Exegesis. That is on textual criticism. We don't do textual criticism in this class. That awaits New Testament introduction. For your purposes, please assume the way the UBS or Nestle Aland text is written, that you will conclude that that is the preferred reading of the text. So we don't do textual criticism. You can skip that. Pages 66 to 138. Skip it. What I want you to note is page 65 and 64, where you are observing in great detail now, not the preliminary, but the intensive step. You are observing in great detail the problems in page 65. You're discovering them. You're trying to get the arguments and resolve them. So now we go to page 139. Page 139. I don't want you to do textual problems in this unless you feel you absolutely are compelled. on an issue that may change the meaning of the text. But I don't think there are really any difficult ones. Page 139 and following help you do grammatical analysis, syntactical analysis. Pages 139 and following help you do grammatical analysis. By the time we get to page 143, we will then have lexical analysis. By the time you get to page 168, you will do historical analysis. By the time you get to page 170, he will give you ways to do theological analysis. And then finally, after that, he concludes with more information on exegetical analysis. Now look at the questions that he asks of the text on page 139. A crucial step in your work is grammatical analysis. I do not diagram. The difficulty with diagramming is a Greek sentence could be diagrammed in a multitude of different ways, all of which can be used to affirm something that someone wants to affirm without really affirming it. It's too subjective. It can be manipulated. So I have you do grammatical analysis, not diagrammatical analysis. And when you look at grammatical analysis, you want to make sure you have the parsing, the correct properties of the verb. Remember what parsing was, gladiators? Describing the verb grammatically in its context, according to its properties. Describe the verb grammatically according to its properties. Remember that? You should be having post-traumatic stress disorder from last summer. Except for some of you who chose to disrespect me, and I know who you are. They all three sit on the same row. It's like the rebellion gathers together, you know what I mean? You look at the parsing. You look at the significance of the tense, page 139. What is the mood? What kind of action? Active, middle, or passive? Are different forms of the verb used? Why would that be? You look at the case forms, and you make sure you've got the cases down. How many cases in Greek? 5 cases. If you're a Dane and Manny person, you have how many cases? We're 5 case in this class. Look at the participles and the infinitives. How are they being used? Look at how the nouns are being used. Look at the particles, conjunctions, prepositions. What function do they have? Look at the relative pronouns, their antecedents. Look at the word order. Do you see that there on page 139? You're observing what adjectival or adverbial modifiers are used. What about the article? Remember the article? And how many different usages we had of the article? Sharp's rule, Colwell's rule. Then we had special uses of the article as well as normal uses of the article. The pointing aspect, the deictic, the numero uno, the celebrity use, the par excellence. Remember those? Or not? Well, if you forget, remember to take Wallace, and in the back, page 726, you take out the, well, I had it here. I don't know. Who knows what I do with stuff in my office. You take that out and you review as you're looking. How is this article being used? Is the word order abnormal? Now, we know in Greek, generally speaking, in broad generalities, modifiers in Greek follow a noun. So if modifiers precede, and what did we look at Tuesday to delight your world? What did we look at? Husband of one wife. And how much did we solve? But you're sure aware of the problem now, aren't you? I didn't say observation solves everything. but clearly it will help you affirm what is clearly there and be careful with what is not so obvious. Are there repetition of constructions or words? Repetition is key to what? Learning is key to? Repetition is key to learning? The key to learning is what? Note grammatical alternatives. Remember, punctuation is interpretation in your Greek text. Chapters and headings are interpretive. Never take a chapter and divorce it from the previous chapter. Push them together again. They didn't write with chapters. They didn't write with verses. It was all in capital letters, a continuous flowing narrative. Therefore, chapters and verses are a beloved contribution that are not inspired and sometimes a hindrance to understanding the context. Do I make that clear? Push the chapters together again so that you can see the writer's flow of thought. Now, the fruits of grammatical analysis on page 140 are very, very important. Analysis is not an end in itself. The exegete needs to synthesize. What does synthesize mean? Can you do an etymology? Syn is from what Greek word? Sun. Sun. And then thesize is from tithemi. It means to put together into a whole. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to understand the author's thought externally as well as internally. You've got to keep the big picture. While you can get within, you need to keep the big picture as a whole. You should do an outline. The outline for you would consist of the controlling purpose statement and the supporting points in your passage. That's also part of the validation process. The supporting points. Do they support the purpose statement? Does the purpose statement support the supporting points? That's your outline in essence. Your outline would be, here is my purpose statement, and here are the supporting points underneath. That's your outline. It does multiple purposes. On page 143, you are to solve lexical problems. Now listen to me. I've had you do a running flow diachronic word study. But listen, that doesn't mean there aren't going to be other word problems in your passage. You're just not going to be able to do a big, long, 15-page diachronic of them. But you're going to have to solve lexical problems, briefly at least, in your passage. The full-length one is special. All should be done in the full length. We know practically you can't. So you're still going to have to do lexical problems. You're looking for word problem definitions. And so you need to do lexical analysis within the context. Now listen to me. Do not take a word out of context to determine its meaning. A meaning of a word is shaded and determined by the context in which it occurs. That's why I don't have you memorize grocery lists of words. Memorizing bare grocery list of words without a context does not teach you about shaded nuances of meaning that a word gets within a context. The word gets its nuances from its context. Do not ignore the context. In computers, it's what? Backup, backup, backup. In exegesis, it's context, context, context. You need to meet it, as he says on page 145, in its native habitat of where it is used. Grocery listing of word meanings does not give you how the word is actually used within the context. And we want to point out something very important. On page 146, do not commit the etymological fallacy. Listen to me. Not only does a word get nuanced in its context, are you listening to me? Wake up now. I know it's time for holiday. And I know you would like to, your mind's already packing up and heading for what various states you're all from. But please listen. Do not commit the etymological fallacy, where you break the word apart and just simply state what its parts mean. A word is nuanced by its context, and number two, a word's meaning can change over time, completely change over time, to where it does not have its original meaning, but it's used in a metaphorically completely different way. Look at this. Another important observation on page 146D is this. Words constantly change and get new meanings, and they even kill off old meanings. Be very careful when you look at a word and then you just take the cheap shot etymology, it's from ek and kaleo, called out, and you don't make sure that you've understood shifts in the meaning of the term over time. Words change. They can even kill off the original way the word was used. Be very careful not to do trite etymologies. He gives you illustrations on page 147, 148, where you need to be careful. Words change in meaning due to context and due to their developmental history. Be careful with just cheap etymology that just breaks the word apart and says that's what this must mean. Not necessarily. Words change over time. Points to remember are on page 149. Number one, on page 149, words do not have a single correct meaning. They have a multitude of shades of meaning. Number two, a word has a history of development. It may change. It could completely change. It depends upon the word. And please, context, context, context. Make sure that you're considering the context as to how it should be used. On page 149, it also looks at the importance of word studies. Some word studies would be Kittle, but we have to be very careful. Even Kittle was criticized by James Barr for being a little too trite. You could use Kittle. You've got various dictionaries. You could consult commentaries. You should also be consulting secular works on how the word was used in secular Greek to determine its meaning. Remember Wallace's chapter where he discussed the periods of Greek history. The top of page 151, Grasmick has a similar chart. Pre-Homerian, the formative period, the classical period, 900 to 330, then from 330 to 330 AD, the Koine or common period. Those are especially the three periods, in addition to what Hebrew words may be related to it, that you want to pay attention to. And your study should be inductive, from particular to general. What is the goal of word studies on page 151? The goal of a word study is to determine the actual meaning of the word in its given context. It is not to take it in isolation, to assign a dictionary meaning to it and say that must be its precise meaning. The word is shaded by its context. Now, Another important thing about word studies is you are looking for non-routine as well as routine terms. You're looking for non-routine terms, especially in word study. These are words that are difficult, page 152. These are words that are crucial. These are words that are profound. It is difficult to tell at times routine from non-routine. Routine would be words that are used so commonly that you don't have much problem. You are looking for non-routine terms. But for purposes of this paper, every word in that passage you'll consider routine. I mean non-routine, excuse me, so that you'll do a little word study on each. But especially on page 152, the difficult words, the crucial words, the profound words, you will especially do a little bit longer for those. That's up to you. You're the interpreter. Did you know that? Who determines what is a difficult, a crucial, or profound word? You do, and maybe consulting a commentary to guide you. Something that you may want to do is take a concordance. Trace that meaning of the word through the New Testament as how it's used. Go to a concordance. Find out how that word is used. Sometimes there are specialized monographs on that word. You may or may not have something available to you in that section, but I will look for that. And as we've said on page 154 and 155, you have a diachronic and synchronic procedure. Diachronic, you're going to trace that word through its history. When you get to that particular book and usage, you're going to do a synchronic study of what it means within that period of history. So this study is diachronic as well as synchronic. Diachronic through time as well as within that particular context and usage, as well as where it's used elsewhere in the New Testament, if it becomes relevant to that. Do not commit, page 154, the exegetical fallacy that James Barr pointed out. And then from pages 155, 156, and 157, he gives you examples of how to trace a word through its pre-formative period, classical, Koine, the resources you would use. Many of you have Bible programs where these resources are available to you on your computer. But you are looking for word problems and the meaning of things. So the rest of this through page 166 is how to do that word study. So please pay attention to Grasmick on he takes you through. In the day this was written, they had books. You have computer programs that now have these on electronic media. So he'll take you through some examples of how to do a word study. Questions? Justin?
Is the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament supposed to be a check only?
No, you can use it. Is that by Colin Brown, the editor?
This Kittle.
No, Colin Brown has one. International. Colin Brown and Kittle are both good.
I mean, but like what they were recommending was you go to each of these respective lexicons, like go to a lexicon for the Septuagint, go to a lexicon for classical Greek, and then...
Generally, yes, that should be your rule, but also, if I can tell you a little bit, a lot of good commentaries will guide you into what sources to consult. Let's be honest. As much as I want you to be independent, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's why I like Honer. He's done some extensive word studies to guide you and to teach you how to do it. So imitate him. It's worthy of imitation. So you're always in this tension. I want you to do your own grammatical observations. I want you to do your own lexical work, all of this, but also you learn from people who have done it for you. But I don't want you to parrot. You may remember, within the confines of the doctrinal statement, you are free. Questions? So over holiday, you will be reading those 4 articles on background studies, lexical, grammatical analysis, as well as validation to learn. I want that incorporated into your paper. Jeremy, you're smiling. Why are you smiling, boy? Is it gas or are you just smiling? Huh?
I was just thinking over the holiday, I'm gonna be doing that lexical analysis.
You think so? I hope so. Any questions now on this? Today we concentrated particularly on lexical analysis. And again, my hint to you is, look at how your Ephesians commentary by Honer did it, and learn from it. I can tell you this in theory, but when you see it written out in the way he's done it, it's very helpful to you. So I guess I'm inconsistent. I'm saying be independent, yet at the same time I'm saying you have to use something that's an example to you. I have my foot in both worlds. Is that what you guys were laughing at? Questions? Mark?
In graphic on page 167, does that look like a really good outline to follow?
On diakonos?
Yeah.
Of course, but this is for Colossians. That's why I give you this, because I'd have you do Ephesians. He did Colossians.
But just like following each other.
Yeah, sure.
Etymological, then classical,
Sure.
Septuagint.
Absolutely. That's why I gave you this. Please feel to imitate how Grasmick puts together his lexical, his grammatical study. And if you look at my notes, there is a paper we will do when you get back from holiday on how to put this all together in the form I want you to do it. It's in your additional notes that you get with this. My own will show you, but this is perfectly fine. This is a very good order, and that's a good question. On page 167 and 168, please follow that order that he does. On the word study of diakonos. Okay? That's a very good thing to point out. Questions? Okay, today I think that we will conclude and start at page 168 when we get back from holiday. I appreciate all your hard work, your faithfulness. We have 3 weeks after we get back for everything to be wrapped up. Some of you still have not given me the background paper. Who hasn't finished the background paper? Raise your hand. Did you give me did you upload it to Jewel? Did you upload your background paper to Jewel? Did you send me a copy of it too? Every time you finish, you need to upload that paper to Jewel. It's on the last day of class area, you upload it, and then it notifies me. I didn't get many notices from some of you.
Are you saying that you may not have received what we uploaded?
I may not have. So I hope that you will make sure that I've gotten your papers. If you've given me a physical copy, I want an electronic copy.
Do you want a PDF since there's going to be a lot of Greek?
If that helps you, yes.
So you wanted 3 if you wanted Jewel, email, and paper copy?
No, I rather have the electronic copy now. What?
Oh, just Jewel and electronic.
Yeah, Jewel and electronic. Okay? So you have a whole week. It's due on that Tuesday, and surely I will hear on that Tuesday, the dog ate my homework. My wife needed me. I was witnessing for the Lord in a remote area of Los Angeles. Please try to get it done, gentlemen. Because remember, whom Maximus loves, he disciplines. Remember that. I haven't said that since Gladiator Greek, have I? Okay, guys.